Welcome to Digital DJ Tips and the latest edition of our podcast. I'm Phil Morse and this is the Your Questions edition. In Your Questions, we answer questions from our students and we've got some great questions in this month, including what's the best way to quick mix between songs? How do I get more gigs? Now I'm starting to get gigs as a DJ. And why does older music sound worse than modern music? The answers to all of these and more are coming up. This show was recorded with a live audience of our students, which means that we get audience feedback and extra help and nuggets of advice all the way through, fed back by our awesome student community, who are also the people who've paid for this podcast. There's no advertising. It's all provided for by people buying our courses. If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating on Amazon. It helps us to get this to more people who might enjoy it. Okay, housekeeping done. Let's get started with this month's show. So our first question today was something asked by Steve. And Steve says, I'd like to understand some basic theory on quick mixing. And can it be applied just on the fly? Not practiced, in other words. And is there a basic method to follow? So Steve says, what I'm getting is that if quick mixing generally relies on cue points being present and on the outgoing track having a cue point marked to indicate where you do the quick mix and all this stuff, are there some basic rules and principles that you can apply to quick mixing if those cue points are not present or they're not available for you to use on your tracks? It's a really good question. So in order to answer this question properly, I want to talk about what quick mixing is and when you maybe would and wouldn't use it. So quick mixing is a common way of mixing nowadays. Lots of times when you might use it. It's when you mix very quickly in a DJ set from track to track to track. Drives some people mad, others love it. And it's got times when it works and times when it doesn't. If you're warming up in a bar where there's 20 people there, frantically quick mixing between all the current hits is going to make you look a bit silly. But if you've been comparing and emceeing a massive wedding all day and you're in the last 45 minutes of the wedding, especially in the States where sometimes the music at the end doesn't last very long, and you've got to get everyone dancing for a frenzied final part of the great day, then absolutely, playing every song from the kids to the granddads and grandmas, and making sure you quick mix so you get the dance floor busy and no one gets time to leave and all the music gets played. There's a time for it. So quick mixing is definitely something to understand, and when you're playing higher energy sets, then often you will want to use this at least for part of your set. But don't think it's something you have to do. That's the first thing I want to say. So the way quick mixing works is that you're not beat mixing and you're not worrying about blends where no one notices what you're doing. You're just getting from track to track. And this is as old as the hills. I remember seeing DJs doing this with 7-inch singles in the clubs in Manchester in England, where I'm from, back in the late 80s, way before turntables had decent speed controls on them, right? So that was the only way to mix. And so the key to quick mixing is about counting and timing. It's about understanding that things start on what we call a one beat, which is the beat at the beginning of a bar, but the bars come together in sections, generally 4-bar sections in pop music. And so you might have 4 bars where something happens, another 4 bars or 8 bars where something happens, and so on. And choruses might be 8 bars of music. At the end of that chorus, there's another important one beat because something else starts, and that's the first beat of its section. That's the place to quick mix, on that one beat. And so the classic is at the end of a chorus. If you play pop music that's got verse, chorus, and you want to play another song, you play one verse, one chorus, and the next song is lined up at the beginning of its first verse, bang. On that one beat, as soon as those two sections line up, and this is where the counting comes in, you stop one track, play the other one, cut from one to the other. You don't necessarily need to have cue points set on your software to do this. You can find the beginning of the place where you want to mix in and put a temporary cue point there. And you don't necessarily need out point marks marked on the outgoing tracks because everyone knows where the chorus ends, right? So it's just a case of quickly and unobtrusively and instantly moving from one track to another. There's 2 big tips I've got for you here though to make sure that you get good at this quickly, because it is a bold style of mixing. Number 1, record your practicing and listen back to it. That's really going to give you the confidence to do it, but also show you quickly what works and what doesn't. You know, a musician will record their practice sessions, and someone who wants to write will write a lot and read back at their attempts at writing and just see what worked and what didn't. As a DJ, whatever kind of mixing you're doing, you should always be listening back to what you've done and figuring out whether it worked or not, because you don't get a sense of that when you're actually doing it. You're too busy doing it. The second thing, and this one is specific to quick mixing, Steve, is that you can compare two songs, any two songs, and you can look at how similar they might be using a very set number of criteria. So the BPM, they're closer in BPM or tempo, then they are inherently more similar. The energy level, are they really energetic or are they quite laid back? The musical key, are they in a compatible or a similar key, so that there won't be a key clash if you were to play one after the other? The genre, clearly if you're playing two songs in the same genre, then there's not going to be such a difference when you switch from one to the other. But also the familiarity. How familiar is the audience with the songs? If you're going from a familiar song to another familiar song, they'll forgive a lot. So you should always be asking yourself when you're doing this kind of bold mixing, once you've got the idea, I want to go from this to this, are they similar BPM, similar genre, similar energy level? Are they in a matching key, which means it might be a little bit less obvious what I've just done? And am I going from something, and the big alarm is, am I going from something that the audience knows and loves to something they've never heard before, right? You've got to be pretty good to get that one right and pull it off. So just have these things in the back of your mind. And hopefully what you've understood from what I've just said is, while it might look like random when a DJ who is playing music that he or she has never mixed together in that order before is doing this kind of mixing, the best DJs are always counting properly so that they're lining up the sections and it's not just mixed at a random place in the track, but they're also often instinctively, to be honest, looking at these things: BPM, energy, key, genre, and familiarity. So Mixmaster G says in our live chat with students as we're recording this, all depends on the occasion and on the track. But these days, most audiences, even the older ones, get bored very soon with extended versions. Yeah, that's going in the other direction, isn't it? You're going from playing the version everyone knows to playing a version that's twice as long. And I totally agree with you there. So it is a good idea to decide how much of a song to play based upon the audience, but also based upon the time of night. And the correlation is an inverse one between the energy level that you're trying to achieve or that's necessary and the length of time you play a song for. In other words, if you're playing songs for longer, you're going to tend to reduce the energy level in the room. And so that's something to bear in mind. So Reza says, if you're not beat mixing, then what does it matter that the BPMs are different? And this is again in response to what I've just been talking about. Well, it's because it can be jarring to the dance floor if you go from a high BPM to a low BPM. Now that can be offset by the fact that the track you've just mixed in is very familiar, or it's in a similar key, etc., which is why all these things are important. But tracks that are very different BPMs tend to sound very different by definition. And so you have to be careful when you're chopping and changing between them, because you run the risk of your DJ set starting to sound quite random. And finally, on the live comments about this one, this is from the Ruckus, who says, I've begun using the quick hit versions of songs. So let's talk a bit about this. If you're lucky enough or you have enough money to join a download pool, and a download pool is a place where professional DJs get versions of songs from that the everyday person can't get, then you can get like shortened versions of songs. They can be very useful if someone wants you to play a song that's kind of had its day, right? So at the time of recording this, if you were to play the full version of Uptown Funk, you might find people got bored after the first chorus, if not earlier. So to have the version that's a quick hit version, in, out, and off you go, then that's going to work better for stuff that you kind of have to play, but you don't want to play the whole song. So thank you for that. So let's move on to the next question. And this one came in from Darren. And Darren said, as a noob drum and bass DJ, I practice and I pull, not drum and bass at all. Oh no, That's right, you did say drum and bass. Again, my poor old eyes. As a new drum and bass DJ, I do practice and pull off a few sets together containing, well, all kinds of music, but mostly bangers, right? Drum and bass is a pretty high energy genre, isn't it? So should I continue doing that, or should I set my sights on kind of somewhere a bit lower and practice lower energy music that I could play in early evening sets, or places, the kind of gigs that Darren is more likely to get? What Darren's worried about is the kind of music that he's practicing as a new DJ. He'll never get a chance to play in front of other people. It's a great question, isn't it? And I'm going to give you 2 tips here, Darren. The first tip is DJing is done in front of other people. So the first thing you need to do is book yourself a event, a DJ gig, a performance. It doesn't have to be a big performance. It probably won't be, because, hey, guess what? You won't be able to get one. But book yourself some kind of place, some kind of situation where you get to DJ in front of other people. Once you've done that, a few weeks from now, could be your family, could be a family birthday party, could be a friend who owns a bar who says you can do a Tuesday night, could be your office party, summer party, whatever. But whatever it is, from that point on, what you're going to practice is the music that you're going to be playing at that event, right? So what this does is clear up this worry in your head. Should I be practicing peak time main room stuff? Should I be practicing underground stuff and try and get a gig in my local underground club? Should I? Well, there's no should about it. You have to be practicing the stuff for the gig you've just committed to, right? So you can see how this strategy focuses you. Playing in front of other people is very, very important to develop as a DJ. The second thing I'm going to say to you is continue to collect all the music that is of interest to you. Yes, you're interested in drum and bass. Great. Continue to collect drum and bass. But anything else that's of interest to you, collect that as well, because you might just find that other genres, other crowds, other ideas pull you away from what you think is your place in this DJ world. So if you are someone who's ever been to university to do a degree, you'll know that when you choose your degree, the first year of, say, 3 years, you chop and change among lots of related subjects. And the reason they do that is they want you to get a broader picture of the whole game before you focus in on the one that you've chosen, because they know that you might change your mind to one of those other subjects. And it's a little bit like that when you are a new DJ. You want to play lots of types of event. You want to play kiddies parties and a local bar and hopefully a club gig warm-up. Maybe do a live stream with your favorite drum and bass. Maybe do some mixtapes of music that you've always wanted to DJ with. Try a bit of everything, because only that way will you gain experience quicker across everything that this game is. But also you might just find that there's something that pulls you away from where you thought you were going with all of this. So I really wish you a lot of luck, Darren. I can't wait to hear how that goes. Thank you for the question. So this one came in from DJ Misha. And DJ Misha says, I was hoping you could help me with providing some advice on how to build confidence. Keep your hands by your sides if you have never felt a lack of confidence or nervousness or imposter syndrome. And if not, get those hands in the air right now, wherever you're listening to this. Misha, I can tell you there's a lot of people with their hands in the air, and they're not doing it because there's a banger about to play. They're doing it because they absolutely know what you're talking about. It's so common, Misha. That's the first thing I want to share with you. There's nothing unusual about confidence crises when you're DJing. So Misha says, I've been in a bedroom kind of DJ situation for several years, which is where I feel most comfortable. Ha ha. I've done a few sets in front of other people, but I tend to get really overthinking and stage fright and all of this stuff. So yeah, it's all very normal. So there's a few classic tips that we always give to our students here at Digital DJ Tips. So in our book and in our course, we divide the way we teach into 5 areas of DJing, and they are gear, music, mixing, performing, and success. And performing, the 4th one, is kind of where this fits in, because there's a difference between performing in front of other people and DJing in your room. Just like there's a difference between, if you're an actor or a musician or a singer, everyone knows when you get up on stage, you're going to be nervous. But somehow with DJs, it's almost not given due consideration. And it should be, because it's just as nerve-wracking. And so The key is, and this is again what we always share with our students, do it early and do it often, as I was saying to Darren a bit earlier. And it's best to start off with what I would call low pressure gigs, low stake gigs. So hopefully they're the ones you can get anyway, where you are just playing to friends and family. But think about other low stake things you can do as well that kind of get you a bit nervous, but don't get you too nervous. You know, I'm thinking things like live streaming on Twitch, and we're going to talk about live streaming again in a second, is something that is a great way of getting just that feeling of nerves, but not so bad that you're utterly paralyzed. And so maybe consider doing a live stream once a month where you just play online, tell a few friends, and see where that takes you. Anything you can do often will just take the edge off it. So I'll give you another example. I'm a runner. My fitness hobby is running. And my running coach says, I want you to enter a lot of races. Now, I don't want to enter a lot of races. To me, it's like running a marathon twice a year. That's all I want to do. But he says, the reason I want you to do that is that you're going to get a lot of cortisol, you're going to get a lot of nerves, you're going to get a lot of stress before your big race, and that can affect you adversely. So if you do lots of smaller races, like the odd 5K or 10K or something, building up to the big events, then what you're doing is getting used to turning up. You're getting used to getting all your kit ready. You're getting used to having a crowd around you. You're getting used to the countdown to the start. You're getting used to the first minute and a half of being in a race. You're getting used to the finish line. And so when it comes to the things that matter, you've already got all that stuff dialed in. You're not getting the cortisol, you're not getting the nerves and all this. And it's the same with anything that gives you stress and strain. If you can do it more often, then do. Accept the gigs which maybe aren't what you'd normally do. Invent things for yourself that you can do in front of other people that aren't high stakes. And when the big ones happen, you'll find that you can manage it better, even though it will always be there. For sure, it will always be there. I can tell you that. So, ATGR says, concentrate on the last 3 days up to the event. Getting ready for this. Everything earlier is usually a waste. So obviously there's a lot of skill in getting ready for big events, and I agree with that. Again, funnily enough, my coach would say the same thing about running. Get the 3 days building up to your big race the same, and it's going to help you a lot there. So it's amazing the correlations between anything that's hard in life, isn't it? There's always things that you can learn. So I'm going to move on to a question from John, and I don't have an answer to this question, but it just shows our ears are all different. So I'm going to read it out, and then I'm going to say, any students who are in the live recording of this podcast, you have access to the chat group, and maybe you can help John out. And anyone listening to this, if you are with John, then all I can say is you've got better ears than I have. Anyway, it's a mystery, isn't it, what I've just set up? Let's read it out. John says, I'm just returning to DJing after many years. I'm excited about the changes. I recently picked up and John mentions a high-end DJ mixer. He actually mentions the Pioneer DJ DJM-A9, which at the end of the day is a very good DJ mixer. So I got myself one of these, and I got myself some other high-end gear, says John, but I'm really upset by the audio quality. John says, I love the features, but the audio quality, it's just not what I'm accustomed to. I'm accustomed to, and he mentions again, some really good old-fashioned, nowadays old-fashioned analog DJ gear, right? Because modern DJ gear is digital. It's got digital to analog and analog to digital converters built into it, so it can do all that stuff. So John says, what can I do? Can you recommend me something I can add on to this piece of kit to try and get that audio back? And he says, should I use the Rupert Neve Master Bus processor, which funnily enough is built into another mixer by that company that's just been launched, the Euphonia. What should I do? Now my two pieces of response to this are, number one, I think that mixer sounds really good myself. So again, my ears maybe are older and tireder, or I just have a different way of hearing stuff than you. But number two, I don't think you can start adding things to audio chains to make audio sound better. I think the harm's already been done. But I don't really have a response to you there, John. I don't know what you can do if you want the features of a mixer that you don't like the sound quality of. I think you're just going to have to compromise somewhere along the line, because it is what it is. Digital does sound different to analog. Analog has a warmth to it, and some would say it's not as genuine audio as you get from digital. It introduces a warm color, but that warm color that it introduces is extremely appealing to human ears. And maybe you're hooked on that. Maybe you need to find a way of kind of using old-fashioned gear with your digital gear that's different to that, and compromise on the features. I don't know. I've put that question out there because I want the people who are listening to this and following this live as we record it to maybe help John out in the comments. Bowden says in the comments, it's hard to compete sound-wise with vinyl, but uncompressed audio files might help. Alex says, I don't think digital will ever sound as good as analog. And so, yeah, there's a few people here agreeing with you. Phil says you should check the quality on multiple systems. It might just be that it's not the mixer itself. And then John is actually with us live to hear his question being answered. And John says, compromise is always tough, isn't it just, John? I agree completely. Right. So this question came in from Andras, who says, my question is, I play a lot of 90s dance music. By the way, this is a great question, and it's really apt for me right now, because today, literally today, I was recording a lesson for our forthcoming second edition of our complete DJ course, which is our flagship course. It's the course of our book. The new book's coming out. The second edition of our best-selling Amazon book, Rock the Dance Floor, is out at the end of this month. And we're going to release a new version of the course a month later to complement it. So it's been re-recorded from the ground up. It's very exciting. And I was doing the lesson today that addresses this point exactly. So it's fresh in my mind. So Andras says, I play a lot of 90s dance music, and I'd love to get more insight into volume controls. Some songs sound great, while others don't seem to have the same production standards. Hence, they sound terrible. Is there a way to balance good recording against poor recording? For example, I'm playing one song where the trim is set to half, which is the input volume control, the trim, and the EQs are all in a standard position. When I mix in my next track, the volume is so I have to bump the trim and EQ to compensate heavily. I don't have this issue with modern tracks. Any advice would be appreciated. I feel what you're saying, Andras. The good news is you've just got to have a change of mental outlook on this. One of our tutors, James Hype, plays basically 95% modern music, fully produced modern music with all modern equipment, modern techniques. James just leaves his trim controls, his gain controls at 11 o'clock. He leaves his low, mid and high EQs at 12 o'clock and he just DJs. And that's it. There's one track in James's set where he doesn't do that, and it's One More Time by Daft Punk, which if you know James Hype, you'll know he's got a signature DJ trick that uses it. And James said exactly what you said to me, Andras, when I was recording our DJ course with James. He said, I've got to EQ and trim the hell out of it. I've got to put the volume half up again, and I've got to put the EQ here, here and here just to make it sound half decent. And the truth is that tracks have been recorded very differently through the years. Nowadays, they're recorded to within an inch of their life. The volume's all pushed so high, every frequency is filled, they're very loud, they've got very modern production techniques. And you go back even 10, 15 years, it wasn't like that. You go back to the Beatles, and it was recorded in mono on a 4-track recorder in a studio that has got less power than, you know, a tenth of what your mobile phone can do. So the whole point of the controls on your mixer is to give you the best chance of fixing this. And so especially when you're moving from track to track, where the tracks have come from different ages, different recording studios, different genres, even different qualities of recording in the first place or file format, then the overall input, the trim or the gain or the level control at the very top of the mixer for each channel, and the EQ controls, the low, mid and highs, are your friend. And you should habitually be pressing the pre-fade listen or the Q button for an incoming track before you mix it in, and putting your headphones on, and you should be getting it so that the level control, literally the level that you can see, the VU meter, is nice and loud. It's as loud as it can go without going into the red, and it matches the one on the currently playing track. And you should also be using the EQ controls, the low, the mid and the high, to make it sound great in your headphones. And then when you think it sounds great, to switch to the currently playing track in your headphones and see how it compares. And that should give you an extra bit of input to say, oh, actually, no, it does still sound a bit tinnier. I'm going to take a bit of the mids out, put a bit of the bass back in, or whatever. You're never going to get perfection, but you can get close enough. And so it can only take 10 seconds once you get into the habit of doing this. And then also know that when you start messing with the EQs, you might have to change the overall volume as well. Volume is king here. If you look at hi-fi magazines where they're comparing completely esoteric, this will interest you, John, esoterically, a 24-bit analog to digital converter to a 16-bit analog to digital converter in two pieces of hi-fi gear, the first thing they do is make sure the volume when they're switching from one to the other to compare is exactly the same, because our brains are hardwired to find louder volume better, right? It might not be better, but because it's louder, we think it's better. So your first trick is to get the volume exactly right, Andreas. But then once you've got the volume right, flicking between the currently playing track and the new track is the best way. But look, this is normal. This is what those controls are there for. Back in the days of DJing on vinyl, we'd sometimes get really loud pressings of dance music. Strictly Rhythm out of the US used to have lovely sounding 12-inch singles. They ran at 45 RPM. There was only one track on each side, which meant the grooves were thick and it just sounded great. And then we would have, a compilation album, a Street Sounds compilation with 10 tracks on each side that played at 33, and the grooves were so narrow that sometimes the bass in the club would mean that the needle wouldn't even stick in the groove. If you could get those tracks to play, you were EQing the hell out of them. Sometimes you'd turn the master volume up and you turn everything down, including the other tracks that you were currently playing, just to get that one loud enough to mix in. And so, look, this isn't a new problem or a new thing to face, but you have got the controls for it. So just don't worry about using them, really, Andreas, would be my advice there. Phil says, everyone is different and everyone hears things differently. This is going back to the previous question where we were talking about audio quality. Oh, yes, certainly. And people have different thresholds with audio quality as well, for certain. Bowden says, if you add remastered to the search terms when you're looking for older music, then you can find versions of songs that just sound better than the originals. That's a really good tip, that, Bowden. There's so many songs that are remastered nowadays, aren't there? And that's enough to mean you've got a version where it just all sounds a bit brighter and a bit clearer. Thank you very much for that comment there. I love the fact that we can add in extra bits of advice here that haven't occurred to me in preparing for these lessons. So thank you for that. Now, I'm going to give a massive thumbs up to one of our star students, Line Quad. Now, Line is visually impaired and has struggled with worrying about playing her first DJ gig, and she did it last week and it worked really well. It went down well. She's one of our students who we've been helping specially with this. So Line, again, well done for this. And Line now says, I'm preparing for my second gig, which is awesome. I'm still new to all of this, as you know, and I'm still learning. How do I prepare a set where the goal is playing background music? So Line goes on to explain what it is about this set that she's got, but what you explain there, Line, is exactly what I would always assume for this kind of gig. Basically, people aren't going to be dancing, people are there for something else, and your job is to set the mood. But she says, what exactly does that mean when it comes to reading between the lines? What do they want when they say people aren't going to be dancing and you're meant to be setting the mood? Line says, I find it hard because for me personally, background music can be all sorts of things, all over the place energy wise, and it can be everything from calm pop music to energetic house and techno bangers. So a few tips here then. Again, in our course and in our book, we talk about playing in lounges and bars and pubs as something that is different from playing in clubs. So firstly, you're going to get the volume low. So that's something that's going to happen. Not so low that it sounds like a background, Spotify playlist, because then there's no point having a DJ, but definitely have the volume reduced so that people can talk, because that's the brief, right? And the second thing, so go out, walk around, say, if I was here in order to chat and to do whatever people are here for, is this music intrusive? Is it too loud, or is it just about right? And it's fine to go out and check that 2 or 3 times throughout the event. I always do when I'm playing in places like that. I always say to myself, well, if I was here for a meal or for whatever people are assembling for, is this music background? Is it really background, or am I pushing it a bit? Secondly, mix up the genres for sure. as you say, you like to play a bit of everything, and for you, background music is a bit of everything. The volume being that bit lower is going to be your friend, because to an extent you can play any kind of music. Because the volume's lower, it's not going to matter. But I would say avoid the very high energy tracks. If you're going to grade your tracks from 1 to 5, which I recommend you do as a DJ, have some way of grading them in your DJ platform so that you know which are the 1 out of 5 energy level tracks. You know, Pina Colada on the beach, kind of, oh, this is a nice song, reminds me of going to sleep. And the 5s are the kind of, if you play 3 of those on the trot loud, people will dance to the first one and maybe the second one. By the third one, they're going to be exhausted, because these really are the bangers, right? And then everything in between, 2, 3, and 4 are the gradients of it all. So if you've got energy level defined on your tracks, I'd say avoid the 4 and 5s. Play your 1, 2, and 3s, because it just goes with that kind of venue. And I would say try and have a way of moving through the genres that works. So yes, you've got half a dozen genres you want to play, and you don't need to play big chunks of each genre and try and beat mix it. You can just play them end to end or back to back. You're a lot freer to DJ, leaning on the music rather than the mixing in these kinds of circumstances. Honestly, it's as much about cutting the gaps out. But don't just do it randomly. Have some kind of way of linking the tracks. Funnily enough, I could refer you back to the BPM, energy, key, genre, and familiarity. 5 things that we talked about when we were talking about a very different kind of mixing, the open format mixing earlier. If you're going to move between genres, then maybe pick something that matches in a couple of those areas to make that move, because it makes even just fading the tracks from one to another a little bit less obtrusive. So it's just a case of more than anything, putting yourself in the shoes of the people that are there. They are great gigs. Some of my favorite gigs have been that kind of event. I've played many residencies in bars, and I like it because you're not tied to what people expect or need to dance to. Because you're not tied to what people expect and need to dance to, you get to play all those tracks that have been knocking around in your virtual crates for a long time that, you know, you'd always just wanted to hear in public, right? Play on a sound system. So good luck with that one. Again, please, Line, come back and tell us how that went. So the next question live from a student, this is from Reza, who says, I'm taking your Mixing with Radio Edits course. So this is our course that's aimed at mobile and wedding DJs to teach you guys and girls how to mix like club DJs, which, by the way, is a very important thing to do. If you are wanting to be a successful mobile wedding DJ nowadays, it's absolutely important that you learn how to mix, because the couples who you are DJing at the weddings of, the people having their 21st, their sweet 16s and all that, they've grown up with dance music. They've grown up with DJs. It's no longer acceptable to be mumbling into a microphone and kind of clumsily mixing between 2 tracks as the best you can achieve. So our Mixing for Mobile and Wedding DJs course, which is a very popular course, it's kind of there to help wedding and mobile DJs to do the kind of mixing you hear club DJs doing, which, by the way, is a harder thing for mobile and wedding DJs to do than club DJs, because the music is so all over the place when you're playing a mobile or wedding gig. And so it's not something to be taken lightly, for sure. And Reza's hit one of the bumps that people hit. So Reza says, I'm taking that course and I'm finding myself in a position where I don't know which way to go during my gigs these days. Like, for example, prior to the course, the only way I mixed was just simple beat mixing. Now with this course, I feel like beat mixing is boring, but other mixing techniques often require preparation before the gig. So my question is, what's the advice for when you have a live gig, but you don't know what mixing techniques to deploy, especially when you don't have a predetermined playlist and you're going all over the place? It's an absolutely brilliant question. So the hole that you can fall into when you take a DJ course with us, where we give you 40 or 50 new techniques, is that you think you have to do one of those every time you transition from one song to another. And that's not really the thinking here. The thinking here is that if we expose you as a DJ school to lots of new ways of DJing between songs, it's going to sink in kind of by osmosis into you, into your subconscious. And yes, the first time you do these things, of course, you're going to have to practice. Of course, you're going to have to rehearse. And of course, you're going to think, if I ever do that in public, I'm going to have to use the same tunes that I saw one of those tutors use. And I'm going to have to do it the same way. And I'm going to have to really build up to it. And, and we've had students who say, I performed one of the techniques I saw in your course, but everyone stopped and watched and was like, what are you doing? And it took me by surprise because I thought they'd love it. And, what we pointed out is if you DJ in one way for a whole night and then just once you do something crazy, then people are going to think, hang on a second, what was that all about? Because it's like the quick mixing thing. You've got to do quite a bit of it for people to get used to it in the first place. So we need to approach the way you're going about your gigs a bit differently here, Reza. I would say, firstly, you're overthinking it a little bit. Don't change overnight the way you work. You're obviously good at this because you've done many gigs where it's worked already, right? So stick to the way you've always done it. Stick to the way you always choose your tunes. Stick to the way you always mix between them. Just try 3 or 4 of these tricks throughout the night. It's enough for people to think, oh, this DJ's got a few tricks, but not enough that you're really overanalyzing and overthinking. But also, don't ever forget that the right way to DJ is to pick the right tune to play for the people in front of you right now. I mean, that literally is a definition of DJing. The right tune for the people in front of you right now. An AI cannot do that. A jukebox cannot do that. A lay person cannot do that. Because if you've ever been with someone who's in charge of the music and they're not a DJ, you know that they don't know what to play next. They finish playing something, I don't know what to play next. No. Your job is to know what to play next, right? It's a definition of DJing. The mixing, honestly, at mobile and wedding gigs, it's important to have a way of mixing that at least doesn't sound like, as I said, mumbling into a microphone and then just clumsily blending the next song in. But you don't need to be Jazzy Jeff at every transition. Just pepper in what you've got, pick the right song to play next, and I promise you, over time, the techniques that we teach you in our advanced mixing courses will seep into how you DJ naturally. And you'll find yourself thinking, you know what, I'm going to have a go at that. And it'll work. And it will be tunes that you haven't done it with before. That's when you know that you're kind of getting there. So I appreciate the fact that you're struggling with this, Reza, but trust me, the fact that you're struggling means you're making progress because you're thinking about it in places you haven't been thinking about it before. It's actually quite exciting, I'd say. So Rick says in response to this question on the live chat, your goal is to get everyone out for at least one dance. So open with some energy, but do save some of the best energy for later, but also examine the crowd ahead of time so you know what genre will get them out. Yes, you have to play music that you don't like yourself. Requests often make great sets, but don't only cater to one group. And this is actually harking back to how we choose the music we're going to play for particular events. And so thank you for that, Rick. So the Ruckus says record a practice mix where you use one taught technique throughout the entire mix. This promotes muscle memory. What a great idea. I absolutely love that. And it doesn't matter if you get it wrong 8 times out of 10 in your practice mix. I love it. Don says a simple, well-placed backspin can make a huge difference in the perception of the audience. Yes. What a great idea. So if you want to get the audience used to the idea that you're going to be doing stuff and it's going to sound good, then a backspin, it's not a hard DJ technique once you've got the timing right, but it'll get them used to it earlier. I love that. And Simon says, it's not 90% tune selection, it's 100% tune selection. I'm a mobile DJ and I hardly mix at all, and yet my reviews are 100% 5 stars. And I'm in the UK, Simon points out. That's awesome to hear, Simon, although I would say that if you can add in some clever techniques, all you can do is improve on your DJing. I mean, it's only going to make you an even more fun DJing. Maybe you'll get 5.5 star reviews. Right, so that's great. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so I am going to jump to a comment from G's, and this is a comment that lets me talk about a piece of software that I've been quite enamored with recently. So G's is in Orlando in Florida and says, if I have 25 songs and they're planned out for a DJ set, and I know what I would like to start on, and I know what I would like to end on, Is there an app to sort out the middle bit for me? Cheers. It's a great question. And some of you will be saying, well, you should be playing to the crowd. You shouldn't be worried about pre-planning a whole set and all this kind of thing. And that's where I want to start. And to an extent, the people saying that in the background here are right. Geez, you shouldn't pre-plan a set and turn up and only play that set. That's not DJing, that's performing a pre-planned set. You're not playing the right song for the people in front of you right now. But what you can do is do something between planning a set and just turning up and playing at random, which is plan double the amount of music that you're actually going to play. So if you were going to play a 25 song set, pick 50 songs and practice with those 50 songs and practice mixing between all of them. And that way you will always have a different direction to go in if what you're playing isn't quite working, but you won't be totally stalled by looking at 5,000 songs in your collection, God forbid. And so this way you're thinking hard about the set, but giving yourself some wiggle room. That's my first piece of advice. Now, my second piece of advice is I'm actually someone who thinks it's totally fine to use any tools you can find to help you here, to shortcut your preparing for DJ sets. And there's a piece of software called DJ Studio, dj.studio is their URL, which uses AI and all kinds of clever stuff. You feed in your tracks and it will spit out a mix for you, and it will put them in an order that kind of works based upon your choice of criteria. Funnily enough, a lot of them are around things like energy level and key and so on. And it will even give you some rough transitions, and then you can go and rearrange yourself and play with the transitions. And when you're finished, you can export the playlist in the order that you've come up with straight into some DJ software. It's a really intriguing piece of software, and I do think it's something that well, in fact, I know it's something that professional DJs are finding really useful. DJs who have to prepare mixes for radio shows where you've got to do a lot every week, maybe they're doing a 3-hour mix every week, are finding it massively useful to use this software to semi-automate their work. And at the very least, it can suggest ideas for you that you can then reject or run with, right? So I would say have a look at this piece of software, DJ Studio, but also always think hard about taking double the amount of music than the number of songs you know you're going to play in your set. When you live in a region with not many people at all, and all the musical niches have already been taken, how can you make room or establish yourself as a new DJ, says Tony. This is all about the fact that, you know, you're in a one club town and that club plays commercial music, but you're into electro swing or whatever. How the hell are you meant to get gigs? How the hell are you meant to establish yourself? Or there's already an electro swing DJ and there ain't no room for two. You know, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? So look, if you're really serious about DJing, Tony, you will move to somewhere where it works. Funnily enough, I was reading about Mozart recently, and Mozart's father toured him, literally toured him like a DJ would tour around all the big cities of Europe. And Mozart was soaking up all the music in these cities while he was playing concerts in these cities. And his father was saying, listen, you've got to know what they're into in these cities, and you've got to play to their tastes as well as soaking it all up and then giving back a bit of what you're about. Mozart was in a lot of ways like a touring DJ. Craziness. It's amazing how music kind of has parallels back through the ages. But my point here is he knew. He ended up in Vienna, which was a very musical city back in those days, where he could do what he really wanted. He had to leave where he was playing music early in his life because it was all stuff in church that didn't make him happy, and he wanted to expand his horizons. It's exactly the same. If you're serious about DJing, and I mean serious about it because you want to make a living from it, then you've got to go where the people are who are into what you're into. Most of our audience aren't that person. Most of our audience aren't a child prodigy who's about to have an amazing career that's going to reverberate through the generations. And most of our audience haven't, sadly, got the life where they can just throw it all in and, you know, do that. So what do you do instead? I've got one word for you: live stream. Live streaming is an absolute phenomenon. It's why we made our live streaming made easy course back in lockdown. Because no one had any gigs, right? So it was the only way we could DJ, but live streaming has carried on since then. Twitch is a very, very vibrant community for DJ live streaming. And they are apparently about to totally legalize the whole thing as well. They've finally agreed with the record labels a way of making it work, which is massively exciting because if you learn how Twitch works and you turn up regularly and live stream the music that you're passionate about, you will find an audience. It won't happen overnight. It might take you months, but you will find an audience. Not only that, you can actually make a bit of money doing it. So I would strongly suggest, Tony, that you investigate live streaming on Twitch as a way to find the people who are into what you're into and play to them without compromising your music. Final two questions. This one is from another Tony who says, I am doing more parties, more events, and even the odd wedding now, and I'm loving it, but I'm still not doing a weekly gig or getting regular work, which is good in a way, as I am a full-time head teacher. But I do want to be playing out more regularly, and I do want to be enjoying the art of DJing to a crowd more often than I do now. How do I do it? How do I get more regular work? And so firstly, congratulations, Tony. And secondly, the way you do it is by treating each of your gigs as a marketing event. In other words, the people who are most likely to book you are the people who've already heard you DJing. So you're going to be aggressively, not like literally physically stopping people leaving, but you're going to be aggressively working that crowd. You're going to be giving business cards to people. You're going to be getting numbers from people. You're going to be talking to the management. You're going to be getting on the mic at least once saying, thank you very much. I am, mention name now. Please do visit me at this website or grab a card from me on the way out, if appropriate, of course. And you're going to be following up on all the leads that you get this way. But my key thing here is the venue managers. They are your biggest friends. If you do a good job with the venue manager, then say to him or her afterwards, hey, I've had a great time here. Has it been good? Hopefully they'll say, yeah, you've been a great DJ. We've loved having you here. And then say, look, I've got a few ideas. Are you around for a coffee in the week or something? And then you can sit down and say, look, why don't you use me as your first refusal DJ in this venue? In other words, if someone turns up and they haven't got a DJ and they want a party, I'll do it for you. Come to some kind of deal. I know a lot of DJs who've basically become the unofficial resident for people booking venues that way. But however you do it, wherever you play live, that's the time to get your next gigs. And that's why you find that gigs come and go earlier on in your career, but later in your career, you're getting them all the time because you reach the point where you're getting more inquiries than you can handle because you've done a good job of that in the earlier years, right? Good luck, Tony. And our final scheduled question is from Michael, who says, hi, Phil, I almost finished the wedding mobile DJ course. I still need support on what is the best practice, here's another mixing question to end us off with, for EQing mixing after transitioning. So in other words, you are mixing from two tracks, you're beat mixing from two tracks. How do you use those EQ controls in the middle of the mixer? So your biggest friend is the bass swap EQ mix, Michael, and this is where you take the bass out of one song and put the bass in on the other song. That immediately takes the attention of the audience from one of the tracks to the other track, the one the bass has come in on, and it's something that is so effective. I know DJs who literally every transition they do, they use it. Now there are variations on this, and in the book Rock the Dance Floor there is a discussion of it, and there's also a video where I talk about it and show you it done. So if you haven't got our book, Rock the Dance Floor, you can go to the Digital DJ Tips website, click on book and go to the mixing chapters. You can read the whole book online there, and you'll also see the videos embedded in there, and you can watch me doing this trick. But if you're going to do one thing on your EQs when you are DJing, especially with songs that are pretty quick beat mixes and so on, I'd look at the swapping the bass from one to the other technique there. So for the podcast, that is the end of the scheduled questions. We're going to carry on for our course owners now on the extended version of this with lots of questions. But if you are listening on the podcast, thank you for being here. We're going to leave it there. And indeed, that is where we left it. If you've enjoyed the show, then please do leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It really does help us. But more importantly, if you want to have your question answered on one of these podcasts, I can guarantee it. All you have to do is become a Digital DJ Tips student. We're the world's leading DJ school. We're the only school with courses from Jazzy Jeff, James Hype, Layback Luke, and many more. And if you are ready to improve your DJing, we're the only choice. Head to digitaldjtips.com/courses. Pick a course that you think is going to work for you, and come to the friendly student group where all of this happens. We'll let you know how to as soon as you buy a course. Ask a question and I can guarantee that it will be answered in one of these shows. As always, it's been great fun recording this. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. Until the next one then, get good, get out there and make the moments. Bye-bye for now.